Imagine a boy, barely a teenager, staring at a map of the known world, a boy who would not just dream of conquering it, but would actually do it. A boy who would ride into battles at the front lines, face kings and armies many times his size, and return victorious time and again. This is the story of Alexander the Great. Alexander was born in 356 BC in Pella, the capital of ancient Macedonia. His father, King Philip II, was a brilliant military commander, feared by enemies and respected by allies. His mother, Olympias, was a fiercely ambitious queen who believed her son was destined for greatness. Some even say she told Alexander he was descended from the gods. From the earliest days, his education was unlike that of any ordinary child. At just 13 years old, Alexander became a student of Aristotle, one of the greatest philosophers in history. Under Aristotle's guidance, he studied science, mathematics, literature, and philosophy. But more than knowledge, Aristotle gave Alexander a vision, a belief that the world could be united under one rule, one culture, and one language. Even as a boy, Alexander's courage was legendary. One famous story tells of a wild, untamable horse named Bucephalus. No man could ride it, but Alexander noticed the animal was afraid of its own shadow. Turning the horse toward the sun, he mounted it effortlessly. The crowd cheered, and from that day forward, Bucephalus became his trusted companion in battle. At 16, while his father was away at war, Alexander was left in charge of Macedonia. When a rebellion broke out, he crushed it swiftly, showing no mercy. As a sign of his authority, he founded a city, naming it Alexandropolis. In 336 BC, tragedy struck. King Philip II was assassinated, and at just 20 years old, Alexander took the throne. His youth was seen as weakness. Rivals inside and outside the kingdom believed they could overthrow him, but they underestimated him. In a matter of months, Alexander marched his army across Greece, crushing revolts in Thebes so completely that the city was destroyed except for its temples, and the house of the poet Pindar spared as a sign of respect for culture. This brutal act sent a clear message: Alexander's rule would not be challenged. With Greece united under his command, Alexander turned his eyes to the east to the Persian Empire, the most powerful force in the known world. In 334 BC, Alexander crossed the Hellespont into Asia Minor with an army of about 40,000 men. At the Battle of Granicus, he personally led a cavalry charge across a river, nearly losing his life, but turning the tide to victory. 2 years later, at Issus, he faced King Darius III himself. Though outnumbered, Alexander's tactical genius trapped and routed the Persian army. Darius fled, leaving behind his family, who Alexander treated with honor, a decision that earned him both respect and loyalty from many Persians. But it was at Gaugamela in 331 BC that Alexander achieved his most famous victory. Facing a massive Persian force on open ground, he used a daring flanking maneuver that broke their lines and shattered the empire forever. From there, Alexander marched south into Egypt, where he was welcomed as a liberator and declared the son of the god Amun. He founded Alexandria, a city that would become one of the greatest centers of learning in the ancient world. Still unsatisfied, he pressed onward, leading his army thousands of miles through deserts, mountains, and rivers into Central Asia and India. At the Hydaspes River, he fought King Porus, whose army included towering war elephants. It was a brutal battle, fought in heavy rain and mud, but Alexander's forces prevailed. Impressed by Porus's courage, Alexander returned his kingdom to him, making him an ally instead of a prisoner. By the time he turned back toward home, Alexander had created an empire stretching from Greece to the edge of India, the largest the ancient world had ever known. Alexander was not just a conqueror, he was a visionary leader. He believed in blending cultures rather than simply destroying them. He adopted Persian customs, married a Persian princess named Roxana, and encouraged his men to do the same with women from the lands they conquered. He founded over 20 cities, many of them named Alexandria, spreading Greek language, art, architecture, and ideas across continents. His vision was to unite the world, not just rule it. But this vision came with a cost. His relentless ambition pushed his army to exhaustion. In India, his men finally refused to march any further, forcing him to turn back. In 323 BC, after more than a decade of near-constant warfare, Alexander returned to Babylon. He was only 32 years old, but had lived more than most men could in 10 lifetimes. Then, without warning, he fell gravely ill. Some say it was malaria or typhoid fever. Others believe he was poisoned. For days, he could no longer speak. But according to legend, when asked who should succeed him, he whispered, "To the strongest." Within days, the greatest conqueror the ancient world had ever seen was dead. His empire, too vast and too young, crumbled almost immediately, divided among his generals. But his name and his legend endured for more than 2,000 years. Alexander once said, "There is nothing impossible to him who will try." And though his life burned bright and short, his legacy became eternal. He was more than a king. He was Alexander the Great. If this story inspired you and you want to discover more about history's greatest warriors, give this video a like, share it with a friend, and subscribe to Chronicles of the Valiant. Your next great adventure through history is just one click away.